Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Hey everyone, and welcome to Raising Parents, the Parenting Science Insights podcast. Produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Dina Sargeant. Now, let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. So we talk about birth and pregnancy quite often on the show, and there's so many different ways to go about pregnancy, so many different ways, so many birth journeys that we've talked about. Violet Wigley uses techniques and tools to build a positive and powerful birth throughout the pregnancy and even after. So I'd love to introduce her onto the show to talk about postpartum life and the stories and the journey that sort of comes about, especially after the pregnancy. So thank you so much, Violet, for coming onto the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's exciting to be able to share some tools and some insights into birth and postpartum and life beyond, basically.
So you we're not always a person that goes through and helps people through birth and even afterwards. So can you talk about a little bit more about what your job entails and even after how you got into it?
Yeah, it's actually quite a big story, so I'll try to be brief. But I hadn't always been in this industry, in birth and postpartum, but I am a mum now. I've got a 4-year-old daughter. So before then, obviously you can tell I'm English, so I come from England, but now I live in Melbourne. I come actually from the design and construction industry, and I got very seriously sick, seriously unwell, and my life kind of changed from that point because it just gave me a different perspective on life just in general and just how to manage my health. And it was during my recovery as just pure miracle that I actually did get pregnant. So I had all these fears and all these, outdated views, as well behind me from what I'd been taught about birth and what I'd been taught about what happens after birth. And I was just really not aware of half the things that I'm aware of now. And that kind of set me on a journey, I guess. I had my daughter in England. I had a home birth. And then within 6 weeks of giving birth to my daughter, my husband accepted a job in Australia. And we moved to Australia, selling our houses. We moved here literally within 4 months. So my daughter was actually 5.5 months old when we flew here during my postpartum. So my postpartum, I had my birth journey, which was epic, but my postpartum was the biggest part of making me. And I had no idea what the word postpartum was. What did it mean? What did it entail? And really how my life would be affected going forward. And having suffered a very serious health condition and having, that second chance at life, I really wanted to, really grasp it. But it was very hard because it was a really huge transformation and no one had ever told me what to really expect. And things that had been told to me were very, more on the negative side, and there was this fear of, how am I gonna do things? Like, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna look after my baby? How am I gonna look after myself? And my husband started his new job within 2 weeks of landing in Australia. And I just really had no clue what I was doing. And it was very overwhelming. So going back to when I was in England and I had my birth, I actually did HypnoBirthing birth. So I studied with a hypnotherapist to do HypnoBirthing, and it actually really helped me. I took some tools from that into my postpartum, and I thought, you know what, I had to leave my career back in England anyway with my illness, but I thought, I'm going to actually go into childbirth because I feel really kind of like I want to find out more about healing for myself, but also be able to support others on this journey. So I did HypnoBirthing within 6 months of arriving in Australia, and And then once my daughter had gone to childcare and to kinder, I went into postpartum. And it was diving into postpartum and really understanding what it was about for me before sharing it with others that really gave me more of an idea about who I am and what motherhood, parenthood, and families is all about. So it really has been and still is 4 years on a very healing journey. And I think, I suppose some ways we think, oh, postpartum is just like, those first few weeks after you've given birth, but it also is going forward for the rest of your life. What does your life look like after that? How do you, connect to things, your sense of self and all of those things that really make your daily life fulfilling, but also bringing your families together and expanding in new areas of your life that you didn't think was possible before. So I'm still on this journey. It'll probably be a forever journey for me because there's just so much to learn about life. And just to, I hope I'm not going on for too long by here, but postpartum, just defining that. Postpartum itself means after birth, but I never knew that. I thought postpartum was, I guess, a negative term for like issues, but actually the word itself just means, post means after, and partum refers to the mother after birth. So very different, well, not very different, but similar to postnatal, but postnatal refers to the baby after birth, and postpartum is simply means after birth. So it'd be good to bring some power back to postpartum and postpartum experiences in general. So that's where my passion is, alongside other things that I do, because I have 2 businesses. But I hope that gives you some insight into, why I'm here, why I'm doing what I do, and also what I'm passionate about in terms of life and building, a happy, healthy family and self.
No, I think it's like, I think we were saying earlier, it's something that we definitely don't hear a lot of the time, or when we hear it, it is a negative term, or it's put with a negative term. It's put with something that is, you talk about the mood swings and depression and all these different things that we talk about, and that we always hear postpartum alongside it. And it's never 2 separate words, when the exact definition is what you're saying. It's after birth, it's after a situation, but we don't hear it like that, and we take it negatively. And I've got a lot of friends who have gone through similar experiences of literally being scared of what life is like after a pregnancy, and even just managing yourself while having a newborn child. And it's amazing that, I mean, my mom was pretty much in a similar situation from when we were younger. I grew up when my sister was born. We basically picked up and left to Australia from New Zealand within, I think, a few months of her being born, just because of work opportunities and job opportunities. So the journey sounds very familiar, and I think the expectation of her as a stay-at-home mom was pretty similar, in terms of my dad starting a new career, building a new career, and my mom having to look after 2 kids, staying home with herself, having no one, not knowing anyone in a country that she's never been in before. So there's a huge connection, I think, with what the story that you're describing and the journey throughout it. And I think you're right. It is such a long journey. It's a life journey. It's life lessons that take part. And this is why we think that you were the absolute perfect guest for the show to talk about this today and talk about your own journey. For this episode, we're talking about life postpartum and looking into the emotional buildup, the routine, some misconceptions that do take part, and also the societal expectations that do come alongside after pregnancy, that do come alongside from whether it's family members, friends, and just a whole lot of different points of view and experiences and comments and advice that all comes along with it, that somehow always seems to come at the worst time possible. So it's something that we are definitely wanting to talk about a little bit more. throughout the show. But before we do, we love to talk about you a little bit more and sort of get to know you as a person before we get to talk to you as a professional. So we love to start off with a little icebreaker, sort of it's called Have You Met Violet? And it gets to know you a little bit more with your different interests that sort of take place in the different areas. So when I ask you these questions or say the different phrases, just say the first thing that sort of comes to your mind.
Okay. I feel like it's a test.
Okay. It always is. Life is a test. The first one is a favorite book of yours.
I love The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton. It's such a, I actually had it here earlier. I actually have it with me. I'll show it on screen. It's such a beautiful book. It's about unleashing the power of consciousness, matter, and miracles. And I'm a lover of epigenetics, science, new biology, and he talks about the environment and the effects on, I guess, not necessarily our genetics and DNA, but just what's going on sort of biologically on a science level, but bridging science and spirituality. And I just think it's really beautiful. It's a very intelligent, evidence-based book. There's a lot of great information in there, and I'm always inspired when I read it.
No, it's amazing how much inspiration and how much understanding and knowledge sort of comes just from reading a book and understanding it a bit more. And especially when you talk about life, people say it's self-help book, but I really just think it's a knowledge and understanding the world, because the world is complicated. So it's good to have some kind of guidance as to how we understand it.
Absolutely.
The next one is a favorite movie of yours.
I love movies, so that's really hard. I did actually have a bit of a think earlier. I was thinking about movies. I suppose at the moment, and it always changes, the movie The Help, which has got Viola Davis in it. And it's about African Americans in the 1960s that obviously had to face a lot of discrimination. And just, I guess speaking truth. And it was just a really beautiful, insightful journey to their lives. So I love inspirational movies like that. And I love Viola Davis. She's just such an inspiration in real life as well as on the screen. So that's one of my gazillion movies, because I love movies. So it's really hard to pick one.
The Help is probably one of the best sort of inspiration movies that you could possibly add to the list. I know that there are a ton of different things and same situation, but different name. And I love the historical accuracy that sort of comes in with The Help as well. So I think, I read the book because of the movie. So usually it goes the other way around for me, but no, I bought the book because of the movie.
It is an excellent story. Yeah.
Yes. No, I agree. The next one is a favorite podcast that you listen to.
Oh, I have to be honest, I don't really listen to many podcasts. However, my teacher, who I learnt my postpartum course with and also breastfeeding knowledge with, does many podcasts, and I can't pick from any of them, but she has got some fantastic podcasts. One other one that really stands out, I know you said pick one, is from Amy Taylor Kabaz. She works with matrescence, which is postpartum. And she did a talk with, it was a partner of a birthing mother, and his role as a partner supporting her through her journey so that she went from, like we say, exhausted to empowered. And it was just really enlightening from, I guess, a male perspective, but also the partner's perspective, non-gender specific. So I feel like that was really beautiful to hear the other side and just what it means to support your partner. Because it's a major life change. Postpartum is such a big topic because it is a huge transformation. I don't think we realize what we take on until we're actually going through it. So that's a really beautiful podcast.
Okay, well, that is probably the place to go if you're looking for some more knowledge into understanding postpartum and how to support a partner as well. I think that is a podcast that we can definitely recommend and add down to the description below if anyone wants to remember that.
It's called the Women's Collective, I think it's called. Well, that was,
Okay.
the Wingman's Collective.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll have to look that up after the show. The next one is a famous role model of yours.
I don't have any famous role models. I have spiritual teachers. I have 3 of them. But I know this might sound really cheesy, but I think especially personally for me and for others that I love, I think that your own role model is you yourself. So for me, myself, my resilience, and just what I've been able to bring through for myself, true testament. There's no greater teacher than oneself, I think, no matter the failures and no matter all the trauma we go through. I think that's the greatest role model is oneself. So I better say you.
I think I've heard so many different answers to that question. I think that's probably one of my favorite ones, just because of how it's, I don't know, it's not meant to sound deep, but it became very deep in terms of just how I think resilience as well sort of comes to mind when you talk about role model. I think the person that you look for in a role model is usually the person that you take resilience from and you take a lot of inspiration from. So choosing yourself, I think, is the biggest compliment, and it's amazing that how many people are in this world that your role model is yourself. I think that's amazing.
I think we forget how important we are. So it's just a reminder to look at oneself. We're always looking everywhere else, but yeah, definitely look within.
Yes, that is the motto for today and the life lesson for today, if you haven't already learned that. Now, how about a favorite course that you've completed?
I love them all. I do have a very colorful background, just so everyone knows. But for me, I'm passionate about all of them because they all come together. But learning Qigong, which is an aspect of Chinese medicine, it's very much like Tai Chi, has been the most inspiring and healing journey I've been on a spiritual level and on a physical and emotional level. So learning Qigong, and I'm continuing to learn more about Qigong as I go forward with more training to advance myself. Has been the most beautiful journey. So, and I bring that into my postpartum work as well.
Wow, that's a pretty cool way of sort of adding that into what you do for work and also taking lessons for it yourself as well. So we're talking about parenting, and most importantly talking about the postpartum life and sort of the misconceptions that take place. Everyone has a very different definition as to how they see parenting. It is definitely not a universal term. It's definitely not a universal phrase or something that we see as one size fits all. Now, what do you think parenting is, and what do you think that it entails?
I'm going to speak as a parent here. And I think now it's really hard to define parenting because, like you said, it's so personal to the couples, the families, the mother, the father. And just so you know, when I'm talking about the mother, I don't necessarily always mean the biological birthing parent. I mean the person who takes a mother archetype that is doing the primary sort of nurturing. I think to me, it's a lifelong process and experience to which we're forever learning in unique ways just how to, I guess, nurture ourselves and also nurture our children. And I think it's, I guess, in a way, learning about what our needs are, which also become our children's needs. So beyond practical needs, our emotional needs, the spiritual needs, I mean, it's a very important stage to which evolution takes place, because every time we give birth to the next generation, there's a change in the pattern, there's a change in the belief system, there's a change in, I guess, culture and society. I like to think, even if it's a small percentage. And I guess there's no black and white answer to parenting. I think it's just something that will continue to evolve through generations. And we also learn from our children. I mean, my daughter's going to be 5, and I've learned so much about her, the things that she sees, the things that she comments on, just being in the moment. And adults get so caught up in, and it's easy to do, all of us do this, but it's easy to get caught up in the mundane, practical things that we forget about the other needs that we have as human beings. It really does extend to other aspects that we didn't consider before. And I guess that sense of wholeness. It's a very holistic experience, and there's definitely no one answer to that. It's just a forever journey. And also, our children in a way somehow parent us in what they teach us through looking at things with a new pair of eyes. So it's definitely an eye-opening and heart-opening experience.
No, I love that answer because it feels so true to how you sort of see a lot of parents go about their day to day. I mean, I think a lot of us really underestimate how much you actually learn from kids. And I learn so much from my friends' children. I learn so much in how to not take things so seriously. And I think that's the biggest thing that you could possibly see in a child. When you see a child just take a little thing, like, for example, falling over. You expect a child to cry after scraping a knee, something they run up and they start running around again and falling again. But somehow that feels like such a good metaphor for how to go about life and how to go through different situations. And you're definitely right in terms of how much we learn from kids. And I feel like we underestimate them to the highest degree.
It's easily done though, because, it's the one thing that I will say about parenting is we have this idea as well, and just going on an outside view. It's easy, especially when we are not parents, to view other parents and have, I guess, although we don't mean to, a judgment because of the conditioning that we're taught about the perfection element of doing things in a XYZ way until you then do it yourself. And you're like, oh, that's not really working for me. And I guess in a way it's trial and error. And we do live in a culture where we have had imposed on us or indoctrinated in us ideals about what parenting should or shouldn't look like. And when we live by these rules, we have these, I guess, in a way, inner conflict, and that can create a lot of blocks within parenting for the individual, but also just for the family as a whole. And that's just something that, really gets worked through. We're just exploring what works personally for the individual and for the family, because we all have different ways of being and doing, daily things, or our beliefs about, who we are and what we're doing, beyond just sort of, just the day-to-day things as well. But yeah, it's a difficult world to live in when we have these ideals, all these, preconceptions, what should and shouldn't be. And then, it's like we always have this inner conflict of what we feel versus, what we're being told we should be like, even though it might not be as direct. We still get those messages into how to be a parent. But it always doesn't always work. One size doesn't fit all, as you said earlier as well.
Yeah, no, I think especially when it comes to parents to be and expectant parents, I think there's a whole lot of, we have so much advice for them. And I mean, I hear all of my friends telling me that, oh, my mom said this, my grandparents say this, my auntie says a whole other thing. And so many people have so many different kinds of input that sort of, it can get really overwhelming, especially when it comes to, I mean, I know a lot of my friends who are intense people pleasers, and they would do things to make their family happy. For example, if it's taking their advice and actually putting it into action, even though they don't feel like doing it. Like a lot of my friends, when they're going through the transition into being parents, they had the idea of, okay, I'm going to take some rest, I'm going to take my time. But there was so much advice saying that, oh no, you have to go to walk, you have to go for a walk, you have to do this, you have to, and it got so much for them. And there's so many different people that say so many different things, I think, as well, that sort of gets overwhelming. So what do you think expectant parents need to be aware of going into the transition of being parents?
So I think, and I'm hoping to address obviously those that have gone through into their postpartum stage as well. And it's, wherever you are on your journey, you can always change things. But if you are expecting and you're pregnant, it's the best time to look at what you want going forward, because we focus so much on the birthing aspect, especially because it is we live in a very medical age, and a lot of focus is put around the birth and not on the postpartum. But postpartum is by far the biggest experience out of everything, because once we've had our child, we're then moving forward in our life, and it looks different from how it looked before. And I think just acknowledging and respecting and honoring the fact that this is a really huge rite of passage. It is a major life transformation, and no disrespect to other things that we may go through in life, but giving birth and creating life is a true miracle. And I think we often do take that for granted and forget. And when we do realize that, it just makes you realize, okay, I need to put a few things in place to make sure that I have all the things that I need to give my family and myself. So I always say preparing for an empowering postpartum journey is as equal, or if not more important, as planning an empowered birth experience. I think as much as you can prepare for during your pregnancy is really important. And again, just what we were talking about earlier, all elements, it's great to have practical support. So caregivers, your support team, your partner and, your midwife, your health visitor, friends, people that you really trust and know will support and advocate for you. And I think it's also really important to acknowledge that beyond the physical aspect, that emotional and spiritual needs also need to be replenished, and having, I guess, an idea of who you can speak to, little things that you can do to top up your energy. So I always say doing things that you love throughout your pregnancy and continuing that to your postpartum as a little connector dot that keeps you in that space of, I guess, your inner self, because your identity does change and the way you perceive things will change. So it's good to have something to connect you to, I guess, going forward. And all those things that you would use for your birthing experience, the nutrition, and, the activities you would do. I'm sure many families and mothers do yoga and mindfulness techniques, which really help with birthing. All those techniques are also really important for postpartum, albeit they are a little bit different. And there are so many postpartum resources now, which I'm happy to, I'm excited about. And there's more and more out there. But I think the biggest thing is also just asking those questions and having a chat with your partner and your loved ones and your doula or your midwife about, what do I need to have in place for afterwards? Because, simple things like preparing your food, I remember in my postpartum, my husband did everything. He was my postpartum doula. He did the cooking, he did the cleaning, he did the washing, and he also tried to be there for me. My friends were all young and didn't have children, so they didn't really understand what the transformation was like. I also had the lingering of my health issues beforehand, but I was able to reach out to my hypnotherapist for some extra support. And just little activities that really give you that peace and joy. So it's really about, I guess, all those things that, you would need for your emotional support, your mental support, and your spiritual support, as well as your physical and practical needs. So energy for the partner as well is really important. So if you can, for example, pre-cook food, put it in the freezer. If you can sort out a food roster with friends, and just say, after we've, had our baby, can you drop off some food or can you do some shopping for us? And just having that chat and aligning a few things that makes it easier for you. And, getting a cleaner in to do the cleaning so you don't have to worry about that, because these little things actually have a huge impact. And again, it's one of those things we don't realize until we're experiencing this for ourselves. And being able to also talk about our fears and challenges, I think that's probably a really important thing, because our mindset is our driver, I guess, and for anything and everything we do in life. So mindset is really important. And if we're feeling that we have really overwhelming fears and concerns, it's really important to get that support to really feel more empowered on your journey and know that it's okay to not be okay. I think that's also really important as well as an expectant parent. And knowing that you're not in this alone, because we talk so much about practical support, we forget that when we feel that we have to go through things alone, especially with the culture we're in, we don't ask for help. And then we wait until we're experiencing a great hardship before we then do try to reach out. But it's very different then, because it's very hard to then energize that action. And then that creates more trauma or more disconnect. So as much as you can think or talk about beforehand openly and really honor your feelings, whatever they are, the more love that opens, and the more that, the challenges that you face become easier. I do something, and I might be going into a slightly different area here, but I do something called an empowerment plan. And most postpartum doulas and other health professionals offer postpartum plans, and expectant parents can actually work through this plan where they have a little look. Like for me, I do a 90-minute to 2-hour session where I go through what their life looks like, what they enjoy, what supports them, what challenges they're having, and what might get in the way of them creating something that they do want to create. So we really have a look at that and bring forward little goals that will help align those things that they're working towards. And then we review that again postpartum, just so they can continue on that journey that they're working towards. And one more thing to share as well is also being aware that there will always be change. What we think and feel we want things sort of like before we have our baby or babies will be different from when we are postpartum, because everything just feels, looks, and just all our senses are heightened during pregnancy, and they're heightened during postpartum, even for, the father or the partner and the non-birthing parents. It really is a very sensitive and vulnerable time, and a very courageous time. So it's just be mindful that everything that you are going through is really important. And I think just remembering to go within and, explore for yourself what your feelings are and what your personal needs are as well. So it's just, it's a very huge topic, and there's probably loads more that I could share. But having an idea of what you want your postpartum to look like, and planning those small aspects, food, cleaning, cooking, emotional support, and just a nice little creative toolbox to pick up from all the things that you love. It might be you love knitting or sewing, or designing recipes, or whatever you like to do, and just having that as something you have available to top up your love cup during pregnancy and during postpartum as well.
So when talking about the well-being, and I think you dived into this a little bit. No, that's all good. I love that you're introducing it. When talking about the well-being and talking about postpartum well-being after, and I love that you shared different ways that different people can sort of get involved, and different loved ones and family members can sort of be there. Why is it important for individuals in the mother role to look after themselves postpartum?
So now, just going back to postpartum itself. So postpartum, obviously meaning after birth, it is a continuum. But the most important window for the birthing mother, in particular, is the first 6 weeks. So what's happening, all hormones are changing within our body. We've obviously given birth to a whole set of organs. And that set of organs, the little child has left our body. And no matter what we've experienced during pregnancy, and to our birth, we had an amazing birth experience, our body has still gone through a very transformational experience. And in a way, our energy, both physically, mentally, emotionally, is also grieving the loss of being inside the body, which is now outside the body. And that can make the body feel very light and airy. And this also makes the brain feel a bit light and airy as well. And our uterus is still, and organs and everything is still going back to where it was in the first 40 days. My teacher, she quotes her teacher, which is Yasha Oaks, a very wise woman, that, and I love this quote for birthing mothers, for newborn mothers, is that 40 days for 40 years. And what we mean by that is because the body has gone through so many changes, and because, we've just become a parent, whether we've had other children, we've just been, we are invited to change once again, to almost be reborn. So it's like a rebirth experience. It's really important to acknowledge that rest and replenishment is really important during that period. And I guess we don't mean confined to the bed, but I guess it's like if we've had surgery, for instance, not that this is the same thing, the healing time straight after surgery is vital to the long-term health. And it's the same with giving birth. We could have this amazing, powerful, active birth, but we still have to allow the body to align itself. And, the bones are a bit softer and, we feel different. And, our temperature is so different. We're so warmer during pregnancy and then we feel a bit cooler after pregnancy because we've had our baby, has been birthed. So having a lot of replenishment internally and externally is really important. So rest where possible with the baby, to bond with the baby is really important. And also, I guess, from the nutritional element as well, warming and nutritious food. So having someone be able to look after you and really take care of your needs and do your cooking for you, be it your partner, be it a friend, be it your mother, be it someone else you trust, or even, paid for help, someone who comes in and cooks and you pay, or someone that is a postpartum doula like myself will come in and cook for you. Having that vital rest and replenishment, nutrition, rest and nurturing, massage, anything that really connects oneself back within is important for the long-term health. Just to share a little bit, there's so much insight in my teacher's book, and I'll share that with you at the end. Many, many stories of women that have not had that rest and replenishment, or have not been, not had the right foods, or not been able to get the right vitamins, because we do need certain vitamins postpartum. And we do need that bonding time to just let our body, get all the organs back where they need to be, because they have moved about during pregnancy, can cause, some further issues in health, as well as, and when I talk about health, I also mean mental health. I also mean physical health, spiritual well-being, and all those other elements that really make up the wholeness of us, because we can feel very disconnected, and not all of us, but some of us can. And taking my example here, in my postpartum, I really, although my husband did a few things, I did a lot myself as well. And I didn't really get the nutrients that I needed. So for instance, I lost a lot of hair, and, I felt more exhausted than I would like. And I felt a little bit dizzy because I didn't realize I needed iron. And I actually now have long-term health issues, and I suffer with fibromyalgia. I suffer with exhaustion if I do work myself too hard. And I just have to work that a little bit harder when I do use my energy. I'm not saying that everybody will go through this, but it's really important to understand that even though we've had an amazing birth, or whatever birth experience we have gone through, it's really important to get that rest and replenishment, and to know that it's important for the long-term health, as well as knowing that if you are not replenished, you cannot provide for your newborn. And we forget this, actually, that because we're so used in this modern world to give, we forget that we cannot give from an empty bowl. And I like to use the story of, if you're an empty bowl and you're placed on the table and you've got 4 children to feed, plus yourself and your partner, if that bowl is empty, it cannot provide the meal that is needed for your children. And I'm not just talking about food, I'm talking about, emotionally, being able to cuddle, to hold your child when you feel exhausted. You're not able to provide that because physically you feel exhausted, or to be, mentally sort of, cognitive, or be able to apply yourself in certain ways that you might have done before birth. It's really important to replenish your energy, and especially the emotional aspect, and really be able to, get what you need on that, especially on that first, those first 40 days. And for me, I didn't really get that. So I really struggled going forward. And that's why I became a postpartum doula, because I wanted to help empower parents on their journeys with knowing what they may need in their toolbox. But every person is different. Everybody's toolbox will look different. But yeah, it's just really important to know that what we do when we have just given birth is really important in impacting the rest of our lives. That being said, if we don't have, it's not our mistake, it's nobody's fault, but if we do feel like, I've not had the postpartum that I wanted, you can create that anytime you want. If it's, a year down the line or 2 years down the line, do those things that replenish your energy. You can still do a postpartum plan. You can still put things in place to replenish your energy so you can be able to nurture your family, by nurturing yourself as well.
Oh, yeah. I think especially when it comes to the way that we sort of see postpartum, the way that we sort of see mothers, we see them, I think we really underestimate how impactful the birth is. And we sort of just expect them to go straight into day life. Okay, we're going to go see people. They're going to meet the baby, going to meet the child, and they're going to see the family all together. But that time, it almost seems like that time is very much focused on the child, on the newborn baby that comes in, which is a beautiful thing and it is amazing. However, there are hardly ever any people that really ask how the mother is doing, or how is she feeling after giving birth? How is she? I think especially the way that I have seen it in films and TV, you sort of see, okay, it's time to focus on that newborn child, and the mother is pretty much forced into being a mother straight away with barely taking into account the fact that she is still recovering, not just emotionally, but physically. Like you're talking about the bones being soft and sort of like the whole last 9 months of the body being ready to give birth is just still trying to get back to normal, is still trying to get back to her own mindset of being, okay, I am no longer pregnant. I am now entering that new area, which is being a mother and being back to being a person. So I think we definitely have a lot of different misconceptions and different understandings as to how we expect a person to go from being an individual to being a mother. So what are some of the most common misconceptions or even some of the stereotypes that you sort of hear surrounding postpartum well-being, and also the different ways that you think that we can debunk them or to say that they're not true?
There's definitely a lot of myths and misconceptions about postpartum. I'm sure we all know that there's been many issues due to the patriarchy where women's health has been concerned. I'm just going to mention one thing which I think is really important. And when I did my talk about this, my first talk about this, so many mothers were like, wow. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is baby brain. And, women and hormones have always been like discriminated against in our history. And I guess in a way, even if it's done in a subtle way, it is a way of feeling like, it's not important. And therefore we feel like we have to just get up and go on with it. But with baby brain, and I had this as well, friends will say, oh, you're in that dumb phase, and, you're not as bright as you used to be, or, something that sort of felt insulting, even though they were sort of having a laugh about it. And I actually genuinely felt really upset. Until I educated myself with the science behind baby brain. And there's one thing about baby brain, it's far from, the dumb or whatever horrible words are mentioned about baby brain. It's actually a very intelligent thing that mothers go through. And a neuroscientist called Marion Diamond, who I absolutely love, she actually studied Einstein's brain. Oh God, I can't remember the year that she was around, but a long time ago, early 1900s, or might have been, I'll have to get the year for that, sorry. But she actually challenged a lot of the science behind women's health, their immunity, their vitality, and especially around motherhood. And she found the secret about baby brain. And a lot of the research was done on male rats, but about female health, which doesn't make any sense at all. And a lot of the science has been, outdated in a way, been based on male subjects, if you like, or male rats. And the reason why it's been done on rats is because the brains and their whole sort of way of connection is the same as humans. It just didn't make sense. So she challenged that to do an experiment with female rats. And she did it with female pregnant rats, which are mother rats, and non-pregnant rats, so male and female, were obviously parents. And she put them in two different environments. One was an enriched environment with maze and lots of things, and the other one was in an impoverished environment. And she found that, and then there was pregnant rats in both of those, mother rats in both of those. What she found with the experiment is that, and I mean, there's lots of other things to mention with the experiment, but what she found with mother rats was that their brains actually stayed the same no matter which environment they were in. But obviously the normal rats had issues being in an impoverished cage or an enriched cage, and their brains were different. But what she found when she looked closer was that the brains of the rats that were pregnant had actually thickened in their cortex. So what had happened is it actually made them smarter in a way. And they had this, I guess, in a way, upgrade or adjustment in their brain to, I guess, advance in a way in their intelligence to do the things that they need to do for their newborn and for themselves with a thicker neocortex. And this obviously is in connection to baby brain for women who have given birth, because what happens is, I guess, like computer software, we've actually had an upgrade. No matter, what we've been through in our lives, we've had that thickening in the cortex, which then gives us this neuroplasticity, and I'm getting a bit sciencey here, which is to do with our learning. And when we have this learning, we have this, ambition, this efficiency, this, drive to want to broaden and expand our life to provide for our newborn. And that's in all aspects of I guess, existence, the way that we live, and what gives us meaning in life. And in a way, because we're adjusting to this new software that's operating, it's upgraded. Like when you download a software on your computer, it's like, oh, I don't know where things go. Like, I'm trying to find, how does this work? It's the same thing. So with baby brain, when we're sort of like mixing up our words, like I used to tell my husband, can you put the Hoover in the oven? And he said, oh, you've got baby brain. The reason why is because we've gone through this upgrade and we have this almost, I guess, intelligence, this extra hypersensitive intelligence. So it's just another way of explaining that. Don't believe just because someone passed down and said, baby brain is, dumb or whatever. That's not really true. It's just something that someone said that we got led to believe because, we believe so much of what we're told, and especially from, outdated science and things that, hadn't really been researched enough. And women's health has been, really, it's had a really big gap in many areas in general. And obviously that comes down to birth and rebirth and postpartum in particular. So, that's a little myth and misconception about baby brain. And that encompasses, I guess, everything else within, the frame of birth and ideas of, what is considered an issue is actually considered something that, is an avenue to expand in a way. So there's many other misconceptions, but that was the biggest one I wanted to talk about. I guess the other one is, and this happened with me as well, is feeling like postpartum is only associated with negative things. So when I did a Google search on postpartum, and I mentioned this to you before, and I'm not surprised, but there's a lot of, I guess, not necessarily bias, but it just points to, I guess, mental health, depression. And now depression happens to anyone at any point in life. And the definition of depression is basically the need for change, the need to expand, and feeling in conflict with what they're being told, that what they have been conditioned to versus what they want. And this creates what we call the shadow self, and then we have this separation of oneself. And when we're not living life joyfully or authentically following what we truly desire, it creates depression. And depression can happen during any major life change, including postpartum. And postpartum is one of, by far, the biggest challenges because we are, I guess, not supported during these changes as much as we should be. It's a myth and especially the word postpartum is used in a way to describe depression because many of us don't want to use the word depression because, we feel like it's such a not talked about taboo subject in a way, anxiety, fears. But, we have them, and it's just a way to move us forward. So, when I put in postpartum to Google, it just mentioned baby blues. And, if your baby blues don't go away, or you feel sad, hopeless, or empty, then you have postpartum depression. And it's just sort of, a straight sort of line to, okay, I have postpartum. And it's not really the way we want to view postpartum, because postpartum itself is a life experience. Depression is an aspect of I guess not feeling, we are living the way we want to live, and it sometimes gets isolated into just postpartum. But yes, it is a challenge that many mothers, many fathers, be they, non-biological parents, they are affected by this because of lack of support, or because they feel, in conflict with, ideals, or I guess society, cultural conditioning, and the environment. So there's many other myths and misconceptions. I could really have a whole other podcast on this. But yeah, those two I wanted to mention. They sort of come up quite a lot.
I think especially when you're saying that Google definition, it definitely sounded like someone trying to diagnose themselves with postpartum depression, just saying, okay, if you're feeling like this for a certain length of time, probably means you have this. It's like, it definitely sounds like you're just they're trying to diagnose you without really any input into your life, any knowledge into your day-to-day life. And that seems like such a dangerous slope to even have available. Just even having that as a Google search, and the first Google search that sort of pops up. While you were talking, I did sort of Google it myself, and the exact same thing came up. And I'm just like, okay, wow, what are they? It all had negative things attached to it. I just typed in postpartum, and it wasn't even seeing, okay, means time after birth, but then there are whole other emotional connections that sort of attach itself to it, when that's not even the whole thing that you're trying to look into and trying to understand. So it's very interesting how we sort of see postpartum. And I think there's so many different, I could assume that there's so many different other misconceptions and, stereotypical things that you would hear, people who have gone through it, people who haven't gone through it. Baby brain was probably the most interesting one when I used to hear it, and I did not know about the way that they sort of figured out what baby brain actually meant. But no, that just it's amazing what people believe, and what society really goes ahead and just says, okay, that is the actual definition, that is the actual term, that is the meaning, without knowing how much harm that it could possibly put on to a person. And I mean, hearing that I could not imagine hearing that as a new mother and thinking, oh, I've got baby brain, and not knowing that definition. I think that is a terrible thing to actually have to go through and have to really hear constantly. A lot of my friends, I do talk about baby brain a lot with my friends, and they joke about it because they're not the most serious of people. So they love joking about baby brain, but I'm just like, well, it seems like such a, I don't know, I don't really believe that it was baby brain. I was like, okay, maybe it's just maybe you're always like that, because they don't really do things seriously anyway. So finding them where it's like, whether it's something new to them or it's something that they've gone through all the time, even without baby brain, even without knowing that definition, is something that's very interesting as well, whether that's just their personality or whether it's something that they are newly going through. So I think there's a whole lot of different stereotypes that come along with it, and they really sort of become stuck in that mindset of being a mother, especially around a lot of other people. A lot of people just sort of see them as a mom. They don't see them as a individual person before a child sort of came into their life.
That's definitely in another, I guess, aspect or challenge for most women, because I feel that especially And I go back to the patriarchy again. I mean, it's being in that system of, and I know a few friends as well that go through this because you are the birthing woman or the birthing person. Of course, it makes sense that you need to be resting and have your, replenish your energy after you've given birth. But going forward, we get a lot of disempowerment. Not that it is something that is intended, but it is something that is, I guess, just in the air because we've been so used to telling ourselves that and conditioned, from a young age about the role of the mother and, in some cases, the mother being at home. And, it might work for some parents, but having that discussion and really chatting about what works for the individuals themselves is really important because it shouldn't be a question of sacrifice and it shouldn't be a question of, oh, well, I've got baby brain or I've got this, so I can't. It's always sort of feeling that we are at a loss when actually we are at a gain, especially knowing the truth about baby brain. We have this ambition, we have this drive, we have this passion, we have all this knowledge we want to keep learning to expand ourselves even more. And this is why we can get depressed as well and feel under the weather and feel limited, is because a lot of people, albeit they want to support us, don't actually understand that this is a really empowering thing. And by questioning, what we are doing and feeling like we're, women are always told we're complaining or we're this, when actually we just want to drive in a different direction. We want to expand. We want change. And I always say that, change is, nature. We are part of the earth and nature has seasons. We have summer, we have spring, we have autumn. We need to have that in ourselves as humans, and especially in the mothering and fathering, the parenting role is really just sort of understand that that's a normal thing to feel. And it's also really important to have that discussion with your partner about what you're feeling and do that in a non-judgmental, open way, separate from what experts in white coats say, separate from what people like me might say, and just really trusting in what they feel, because no one will know better than yourself. We do live in an age where we do rely on external support. However, we are different from how we used to be before the colonization era, before, nuclear families and having to, drive the career and what happens, and I'm touching on another question probably, is the male in particular, and I don't want to dismiss partners of same sex, but males in particular assume more, or the partners assume more of a protective role. And that means that then, they want to go out and work, they want to provide, and they want to do these things. And, that is caring and making sure that, we have all this like protective lion role, protecting the lion cub and the lioness, which is beautiful. And there's a lot of hormones involved with that, because men have hormones too. They work a little bit different from females. But it's just about adjusting to how that works for you, because it's not always necessary that it's the partner or the male that goes out to work and provides. And the mom, maybe needs to have a bit of time to recover and to, adjust to things as well. But also being able to swap those roles over and to see, it doesn't have to be that way going forward. Well, and reviewing that at regular stages is really important. And I know many friends that have, feel conflicted by that themselves because it doesn't work for them, but yet they feel limited that they have to do that because that's what they've been told their whole lives. Having said that, my teacher, such a beautiful inspiration, Julia Jones, she has a house husband. And she is the weekend parent because she is the main provider. And that's what works for them. And I think it's really important to really break, I guess, also the gender stereotype, as well as everything else within what society and other cultures may dictate that don't agree with our inner knowing as well. So, and I think what it boils down to is just asking yourself that question. And to couples, if they are listening to this and they are expecting, just ask yourself, what matters to you and how do you want things to look like? And just keep checking in with each other, and with an open mind, just have that discussion. The good, the bad and the ugly, I call it. It's really important to have that chat to move away from, all those limitations. And it's hard to do because we're faced with it every day.
No, I completely think that you're right. I think it's something that we I think the discussion is such a important part of sort of what's expected of both partners, whether they're, okay, who's the one that's going to stay home? Are they both going to go back to work? And I think we sort of underestimate the opportunity to really learn from both sides, of the argument, learn from both sides of, and I think especially when it comes to cultural wise, you hear a lot of people say, okay, it's just expected that the mother stays at home and looks after the child, but there's so many different variations as to how the world goes about now in so many different ways. I know a lot of people who both of them work and they go send their child to, I mean, the child is old enough to sort of go to daycare and be looked after by someone else and have that connection and meet kids of the same age that are able to also help with the social skills and be around for the child when the parent isn't able to. Because, I mean, especially in this day and age, I feel like it's hard to have that single income coming in. So I totally see and totally understand the different ways that, and the different reasons that we need two-income household, or we are expected to have a parent that's always at home or someone that's always looking after a child without feeling like they're neglected, and to make them feel like they're loved. But I think we're sort of underestimating the resilience of a child in a lot of ways when it comes to just being there and spending that quality time with them. And also I mean, we're talking about postpartum, we're talking about so many different things, and we're talking about the misconceptions, and as well as so many different stereotypes that sort of come about. And I think there's so many things when it comes to exhaustion and burnout. I mean, it happens to pretty much everyone at any time, but it's a completely different thing when you're talking about a postpartum period and being in that postpartum time of feeling that exhaustion and feeling burnout. So to you, what are some of the key factors that come in and contribute to postpartum era and being exhausted and easily burnt out?
Yeah. I think it follows on from what we were just talking about. And it's not the parents' fault or anybody's fault in particular. And I just want everybody to know that when I am talking here, and just being sensitive to that. But it's very, I guess, again, especially with those ideals that we're fed, feeling that we can't ask for help and that we are, in a way, and I had this message as well, that we have to be independent and just get on and do it. And that will, I suppose what we don't realize, especially for a first-time parent like me, who's had my first child, was I didn't realize when I was at home and doing everything by myself, it was a lot to take on, because looking after your child, especially a newborn, is actually a full-time job in itself. There's the caring role, and any kind of caring role in general. This is why midwives were burned at the stake for being witches, because the whole caring role had been demonized, thanks to the patriarchy again. I'm looking forward to that disintegrating completely, but which is starting to happen now. But that kind of idea that, we have to do everything alone and not be able to reach out for support. And that can be a major factor in burnout and depletion, because we are also trying to look after ourselves. And, don't forget, we were also looking at, we've had 9 months of pregnancy. So when we're postpartum, it's not going to be we've had a birth where we're, not that we do think this consciously, but perhaps we are fed this through our environment and the media. And the Americans are famous for this. But, really, that shiny, the super mom, and the dad that goes out and works really hard and he's got his career. It's almost like that's how it's supposed to be. And we know that that's not right, yet at the same time, we are faced with it. And vice versa, dad's feeling like, I want to be at home more doing more of the things and nurturing role, and mom do, a bit of the income while she's, XYZ recovering, and find a way that works, half and half, which a lot of couples do. But I'm sure there's a lot of couples that do relate to this, feeling that, and especially moms feeling that they have to just take it all on, genuinely because they want to. But it is a lot when you are looking after your children, and if you've got more older children as well. And then trying to say, do the cooking, fresh cooked food, do the shopping, that takes energy, it takes time. And with children, it really is a lot. Then you've got to think about feeding time for your newborn, which, young babies, they need to feed regularly. And if you are breastfeeding, that also takes a lot of energy because, yes, we're feeding from the breast, but that's our immunity and vitality. Are we getting nourished enough? Are we getting rest enough? And we cannot get that balance. And when we can't get that balance and we're overflowing with our energy just going everywhere, it can really lead to burnout. And I myself have actually been through the burnout and to the point of exhaustion that I collapsed on the floor. I had to get a carer in to look after my daughter and also myself. I did not know that postpartum doulas existed, and I really wish that I had them when I was, especially earlier on in my postpartum. Another thing that can lead to exhaustion is also, I guess, the mindset. I suppose the starting point of all of that is our mindset and asking for help. Should have started with that. But yeah, it's just feeling that, I guess, in a way that we need to be quiet and get on with it. And that emotional turmoil can be exhausting. Plus then also, still trying to maintain our relationship with our partner and our families and our friends, which will all be different. And making time to also have, that relationship connection is also another area where energy is, can be depleted as well. And it's just trying to balance all of that. So yeah, it's really, I guess, that role of doing a lot by yourself and taking on a lot by yourself. It's like doing, I guess, 7 jobs in one. We don't realize how much, because these types of roles have been devalued so much over time. We think, well, I should be able to breastfeed my child. I should be able to cook food. I should be able to clean the house and do the washing. I should be able to also work, because some moms work, within 6 or 7 weeks, they're back to work and they're doing, part-time work at the same time. It's a lot energetically. So I think that realization has got a big thing to do with it. And again, not having that discussion with a partner or a friend or a professional about, what our challenges are and being able to change that is really important. I think it's quite often in birth and in postpartum, we feel we don't have an option, and therefore we feel, I guess, limited. So we've got no choice but to get on. So that's really like a huge burnout from physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental levels.
Yeah, there seems like a whole lot of expectation that sort of comes about when it comes to, you talk about a mother needing to balance every single part of her old life, what seems to be like her old life before a child came in, and also try to find her balance in her new life and her new role that she's sort of needing to partake in. And I think especially when it comes to keeping the relationships of people around you, it seems like an impossible thing on the daily anyway. Just coming out of a pregnancy or just postpartum, there seems like the huge need for everyone to always want to be around you, and for everyone to always, okay, you have to make time to see this person, and all the kind of expectations that you're still going to be the same person after pregnancy. For example, if you're a huge social person before pregnancy and suddenly you sort of deplete that in terms of what you can take and what you can handle, that seems to be like, okay, so you're not the same person again. You're so different. You're not how you used to be, without really realizing that there's a whole different change that sort of comes about. And when we talk about societal expectations and friend expectations and the amount of pressure that goes on, what are some of the strategies that can be employed to even navigate and overcome these different struggles that sort of come about?
So I always say it's like creating your own personal meal plan. So boundaries and everything that you love to do will be really personal to you. And the bottom most important line I'm going to talk about is peace and joy. What brings you peace and joy? And if you can ask yourself that one question and just sit with it, it might be a couple of days, just sit with it. you'll start to then feel into what you want things to be, change, or look like. And, it's not easy to communicate to our partners. It's not easy to ask for help. It's not easy to, pick up the phone and call, Beyond Blue if you're having, those thoughts that sometimes we do have. And I've been there. I've had those dark thoughts because I've been at my wit's end feeling so alone. But once I've tapped into that breath and connecting to myself, it's a great strategy to just align. And I'm a great believer in self-healing ability. And there's many other tools within mindfulness that you can use. And there's so much out there. And if you are looking into podcasts, I highly recommend you look at Julia Jones's podcasts. And I also offer a lot within my own postpartum empowerment care and empowerment plans. I guess it's really about, just really finding what works for you. And every week, every day, every minute will be completely different from the next. And the things that you may want or thought you wanted will change. And that's okay, because this is a really learning journey. So I guess it's not really a strategy in a way, but just, I guess, an acknowledgement that it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to be confused by everything because you're just finding your way. Another really important thing to put in place is, and I don't know if I mentioned this before, but your support team, but your village, and your support village is really important. And when I talk to birthing clients, I always talk about, if you're running a marathon, you're not going to get up and just run that marathon tomorrow. You're going to take your time every day with your nutrition. You're going to have your support team, people who are going to egg you on when you feel like, oh my God, I can't do this. People are like, hey, you're nearly there. You're doing it. And you need people that are going to, just support you and advocate for you and listen to you and support you as you're running that marathon. I know it's a different thing, but, that's really how we want to view our approach to birth and to, postpartum is, we're spending time on ourselves to be able to do these things. And whatever we can empower ourselves with in our preparation just makes it all the more, of an experience that we desire. And it's okay if it isn't always like that. We can just add that in. As soon as we're aware of it, add that in. So we want our support team. We want the right mindset and really exploring our feelings. Another strategy, which is really, really important, and it's a fun thing, I call it Oxytocin Boost Plan. And it's a really fun sheet that I create. And I'm happy if anybody reaches out to send this on to Dina or to just make it available. But oxytocin is available as soon as or during the time, it peaks during pregnancy and birth, but it's actually available in everyone and anyone, even in animals. And we can boost that in our environment, even if we, cannot optimize it during our, birth and postpartum period in the first few weeks. And boosting our oxytocin, I do this with my family as well, is anything that you love to do. So like, for example, yoga or dancing, or art drawing, or listening to, podcasts, or anything that you love to do, warm baths, smelling salts, whatever you love to do, whatever book you like to read, whatever activity you like to immerse yourself in. If you can make that part of your day, it's a great thing to just bring you back to, oh God, because we can be consumed by motherhood or fatherhood or parenthood or, where am I? What am I doing? And to just have something that gives you a boost to top up your love cup is such an amazing thing to do. Even if it's 5 minutes, boost your oxytocin. And oxytocin actually affects just connecting to the baby brain, that neuroplasticity and that loving as well, all of that sort of energy and in being creative in other aspects of our daily life. Another way, if you feel like, oh, I need to be alone to do X, Y, Z, you can incorporate that with your family. For example, I love listening to David Bowie, and my favorite track is Let's Dance. And I used to burp my baby, just sort of dancing to that song. So I thought, well, I'm on my own, but I can just dance with her at the same time, and then I'm doing what I love, but she's also enjoying it, because when we do what we love, because our children are so connected to us, be it with a partner or the birthing mother, they can feel that, because don't forget, they're made from our, biology. So they are connected to our feelings. And if we're feeling boosted, they feel boosted. And oxytocin is infectious. So just like laughter is, we feel that, and it's very energizing. One more thing I just want to say is also acknowledging that it's okay to make mistakes, just going back to that point I made before as well, because it's such a transformational journey. We are taught that we have this perfection and it must be, we've got to do this, and our own judgment, our own rules can also limit us. But just knowing that making mistakes is what makes us wiser, and being able to make those mistakes just brings more wisdom to us. I mean, we wouldn't know what works for us unless we try it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And that goes beyond what professionals may say to you that you may take on board, what other people may say to you. It's really about finding what works for you, and that is a journey that takes time. Change is gradual; it doesn't happen instantly. So those are the few things. There's many more, but those are the main things. Just having that chat with your loved ones, especially your partner, and just acknowledging that you're in this together. I know that the birthing parent may feel, well, I'm nurturing this baby, they're inside my belly and I've given birth and I'm breastfeeding, but the other parent has also created a life with you, and it's an equal role, equal connection, and it's really important to know that you are in this together and be working together and what works for you. So yeah, that kind of rounds out some strategies, but there's so many more.
No, that sounds like an amazing sort of introduction into the different strategies that, I mean, not only you offer, but different ways that they can sort of go through it themselves. And I mean, I love the idea of dance therapy and just sort of dancing along. And I dance in my kitchen a lot of the time, just sort of release that little bit of stress that felt throughout the day. And sometimes I blast my music a little bit too loud, and there are other people living in the house as well. But no, there is that little moment when I think everyone in my household knows that I am stressed or like sort of debriefing myself on the day. And that is something that I have always enjoyed doing. So I can definitely see how that would help so many different ways. And I love that is being used as a actual way of sort of releasing that level of stress that sort of comes about. Now, speaking of strategies, we're going to go and dive straight into the different practices and habits that you would recommend for a lot of people. What are some of the practices that you can recommend to parents in order to enhance their well-being after postpartum period?
I'm going to address challenges here, because challenges we face daily anyway, just in everyday life, with or without having children. And there's one thing that I like to do, and I think it's really important to do, and it's not easy, but I always advise taking 5 minutes out and doing a bit of, I call it a bit of a challenge sheet. But I guess in a way it's just having a look at your intention, and you can break it down into your day. So 5 minutes in the day to sit and just have a look at how you're feeling. Something that's come up as a challenge for you, might not be, but if there is, just to write that down. And I always say journaling is quite a good tool, because we can often feel overwhelmed with many thoughts. And postpartum, our brain, and for both parents, feels like we've emptied out a filing cabinet. It's all over the floor. And what's happening is we're reorganizing that filing cabinet, and some stuff we're getting rid of and some stuff we're keeping, new stuff we're bringing in. And it's really good to just have a little review. How am I feeling? There's something coming up as a challenge for me, and it doesn't have to be anything big. It could be as small as, I'd like to have 5 minutes to have a cup of tea in the garden today. How am I going to do that? And just have a look at what might get in your way, and also having a look at what you can do as a small step to do that. I know it sounds like a sort of, trivial example, but actually for me, having a cup of tea in the garden was something I really wanted to do in my early postpartum, but I felt like I was so chained to where I was in the bedroom and breastfeeding my baby that I couldn't do that because my husband was busy doing other things. And I became very stressed about that. But just being able to have a check-in, and obviously I've done this much later in postpartum after doing the course, actually helped me to look at that and then actually look at, well, what's blocking me? And then I realized when I wrote down just a couple of sentences, I thought, actually, I can do that. And then I was able to discover that, okay, my daughter's actually now, settling a little bit. So I'll go and actually ask my husband, can you hold little one for 5 minutes? I'm going to go out for some fresh air and have a cup of tea. Obviously, I stretched out for 10 or 15 minutes, but that, so little things like that, just having a check-in is a really important thing to do. And it's not easy because I've had some of my couples do that and they're like, oh my God, it's really hard. I put it off for like a whole week. But it's a good way to, especially when we can't always talk to someone, just to be able to have a conversation with ourselves first. And if we do feel like things are too overwhelming, we can put on our little list, what's getting in my way? This, I feel like I still can't do what I want to do here and have that cup of tea. And that's when you can reach out to, say, for instance, postpartum support. Maybe it's a postpartum doula. Maybe it's a hypnotherapist. Maybe it's a life coach. Maybe it's, another healing service that's available, because there's so many options out there. And there's a lot of lifelines as well. If we do want to just have a chat about what we're feeling and we feel like we can't really do that by ourselves, there's so much support out there. So that 5 minutes is really important. And I always say create a little sacred space. So if you can create a little, if you like candles, or if you like fairy lights, or if you like, a little outdoor space, just have a little space you can go to that where you can sort of be. And that's your little sort of, your little go-to, your little space where you can just reconnect for a moment. And, even if your baby's napping on you for a few minutes, just doing that, you can still do that. And I guess the other things would be taking some time out to move. I wouldn't advise so much so in the first 6 weeks, but certainly afterwards. Breath exercises are a really important strategy for alignment and balance. When I teach Qigong, and this is something I love to do for postpartum clients as well, is just to be able to restore that sense of, I guess, strength, core strength. And sometimes just the breath does that. And we'll just do some gentle movements. And you can do this by swaying. You can do this by, I'm not talking about Qigong here, but just any kind of movement. And if you do love dance, this is something that you can dance to, something that you can listen to. And if you're a creative person, I think bringing that into, your sort of daily routine is a great way to express yourself as well. If you find writing words is a bit difficult, which it can be, it's challenging. And I would say, and this is really hard as well, and I said this with the last question, is just sitting down with your partner and having a chat about anything that is external to where you are in motherhood, other things, that excite you or that you want to talk about, or other things that maybe you're feeling fearful about as well. So having that conversation with your partner is really important. And I guess beyond that really is just having a look at what you want long-term as well, and thinking about, what does my breastfeeding goals look like? And, do I want to do this for, longer, or do I want to go back to work, or, maybe I want to do something else? Just having a little ask and feel into what you want to do, besides, from the mothering or the fathering role as well, and just sort of thinking about what you want for yourself is really important. So I guess I'm approaching this in a different way, because we have ways of doing things very masculine in this world. And by masculine, I don't mean men. I mean more of action. We must do arbitrary tables. It's got to be this, this, and this. There's just no kind of answer. It's not black and white. I think it's just feeling into what your feelings are as the most important thing. And I'm just making sure that I've got some notes here as well. Yeah, creating some healthy boundaries. And I think also what's really important to consider is emotional digestion as well. Quite often we feel, depleted, and we struggle in general when our stomach is not well fed. In Chinese medicine, which I'm very close to, especially as I do a bit of acupressure and Qigong, is the stomach and the spleen is like the main brain of the body. And 95% of our transmitters of communication is in our gut. And when our gut is not warm, comfortable, well-fed, and having the right nutrients, we're unable to actually process and deal with daily things, long-term things, issues, and anything else we may want to change in our lives, positive, beautiful, empowering things. And having good, nutritious, especially in the early days, soft food in the first 6 weeks, it makes it easy to digest, is really important. And just how we view ourselves when we have given birth, we are actually, and my teacher uses the term newborn mothers. And that is a true term because we have, and I felt this the same with when I gave birth to my daughters, I felt like I was a baby in a way, not in the sense that I needed everything done for me, but I felt like my digestion was different and I needed softer, warm food because I felt different in my body. I had this large gap where my baby used to be, and I've got all this space where my organs are sort of trying to move back in place. So there is a really great book that my teacher wrote called Nourishing Newborn Mothers. And within that, it's got a lot of recipes for, I guess, our emotions as well, milk boosting for breastfeeding and all those other things that are to do with digestion. Because when we're having nourishing, warming, soft foods that are easy to digest, we're able to just get back into flow and just sort of align a bit more into, feel into where we are. So I guess the first calling point is food in a way as well. And food that is cooked for you, not by you. So I always say when I give these recipe books out, make sure you're not cooking this because you should be resting and you should be recovering. And, someone else should be doing that, giving you that nourishment so that you're replenished to, provide for your newborn as well.
Yeah, I think there are so many good practices that that you're suggesting, so many different ways that we can sort of implement these into our daily life, especially when it comes to the connection that you have between you and a partner, you and your partner, you and other people around you. And I mean, I love the idea of being cooked for. I think that is it's a love language that I think can be put into place all the time and put into action. And I definitely love the idea of just having that connection remain between you and the people you love, and also taking that time for yourself. And I think we sort of underestimate the importance of self-care and looking after yourself after this huge journey that you've just sort of gone throughout the past 9 months, throughout the past time that you've gone through pregnancy. There's a whole other different way of sort of going through it and understanding. And I love the idea of a newborn mother, just sort of outlook into how you now would see yourself and how you now would sort of set different views in life and different outlooks that you've sort of taken in and just see yourself having. So now we're going to go into the open mic, and it gives you a chance to talk about something that you are passionate about, something that you want to share with the audience. So in the last minute or so, I would love to give you the floor and just talk to the audience directly.
Thank you so much. So beyond postpartum, which is such a huge topic, I'm really passionate about art. Art has been my own personal love language and my healing journey. And I always say art is we always think we have to be creative to be artistic, but, I think it's something that is an expression of self, and no matter what it looks like, it's beautiful in what it is. So for me, I'm really passionate about art because it's helped me heal through my life journey, in particular through my health issues. And it's just provided me, I guess, with an avenue to understanding myself more. And I love recommending it to those that I do work with as a way to, I guess, express and just to connect deeper into the heart. I think so often we are in our minds so much. We're in a very cognitive world that likes definite answers, concrete, black and white, but the world just isn't like that. It's such a rainbow, and a rainbow of feelings, ideas, options, and, variety. And I think it's really important to explore that. And I love exploring that through material and textures, colors, paints. And my daughter is the same. I am actually also a healer. And when I do my channeled healing work, I sometimes channel artwork. And I can't even remember painting because I'm tranced out doing it, because I'm so absorbed in the flow of the brush. And when I have painted something, it's just, and I look back, I'm like, oh my God, And it's something that I've had in my mind somewhere that's actually out in front of me, as a version of me, I guess, in a way. So I think it's really an important way to express feelings and to also find oneself. It's a very beautiful journey. And it's something that I feel strange if I don't paint. I feel like it's something I have to do that keeps me going, keeps me flowing. And I feel that it's a great way to get that energy as well. I love doing it with music and just having a bit of a dance sometimes, depending on what energy I'm in as well. Or sometimes I listen to relaxation music and just zone out. And I'm really passionate about, creative and artistic approaches in other areas of my life as well. My food, the way I present my food, or the things I do with my family, and just incorporating that in other ways as well. So, yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing that's not, I was sad to learn that they're not doing as much art in schools, but I think it's a really beautiful, I think also in a way undermined as well, art is. But for me, I think it's such an empowering thing to do. And I find it very empowering when I can get my journey out on a canvas or on a piece of paper or on a box or whatever I'm painting on. So that's something I'm passionate about.
No, I love the idea of art, and just sort of, especially during lockdown, that was a big art phase of mine where I constantly was getting canvases off of Spotlight and going, if you don't know, Spotlight is sort of like an art store and a craft store in Australia. But for people who don't know, I know there's so many people around the world that listen to this, so just in context. But I love going there or just ordering it online and having that little time where I'm outside on a sunny day and just sort of painting. Sometimes it's paintings that don't even make sense. Majority of the time it is, because I cannot paint for the life of me. So it's no, exactly. So it's like little splotches. I get little old sponges and I'm just sort of like splotching it on. I'm throwing paint onto the canvas. So there's a whole lot of it, but it's cathartic. It's such a stress relief that we sort of underestimate. And it's amazing just how, I mean, there's a product at the end of it. There's something that to show for all the stress and all the relief that you're going through. It's sort of what the end result is. And I always saw it that way. Every time none of it made sense. The whole idea of throwing paint at a canvas and calling it art is something that didn't make sense to a lot of people, but it's not art, it's release. And that's what the canvas, that's what I actually named one of the paintings that I made. It was just release. It was literally just me throwing paint at the wall and saying, look, I made an art project, but it did not look like anything that you would see in art or what you define art as. I just called it a release because that's exactly what it was. And then it became such a big part of my life. And I love sort of going into and doing the paint by number things a lot of the time, because I'm always seeing them around and I just go ahead and buy a whole lot of them. And whenever I feel like I need to paint, it's all there. It's all there in one place. It comes with paint. I don't have to buy it myself. So it makes sense to sort of take that time and find different ways to be creative and to be to see the world in a different way, and to see it in color, I think, is a big thing as well. Yeah. Thank you so much, Violet. I think I've had one of the great talks today and talking about, I mean, I love knowing the definition of postpartum and talking about some of the misconceptions that, I mean, I think I already assumed a lot of them, and I think a lot of my assumptions were correct in sort of how we see birthing mothers and how we see mothers to be. But I love talking about it with you and just seeing your perspective on it. If there are people who wanting to talk a little bit more about it or mention things that I haven't spoken about, is there a way that they can get in contact with you?
Absolutely. I have a website. I have two websites. So I'm naturalbirthmagic.com.au. And I'm also goldenviolet333.com as well. But Natural Birth Magic is my sort of main space, but it's quite easy to find on social media as well.
Oh, perfect. I will definitely have the link down in the description below on our YouTube channel when the episode comes out, and we can see Violet's workshops as well that you hold, whether it's online and I think face-to-face as well.
Yeah. I work with actually a lot of clients in America as well with, I do birth story healing as well, which is for anyone who wants to talk about their birth journey and needs a bit of resolve to anything that they found really challenging or even traumatic on their journey. So we'll definitely be able to find some resources as well. But I would love to be able to just have a chat or support anybody who resonates with anything that we've spoken about today.
Yeah, well, that's perfect. So I'll definitely go and check out Violet's website and go get in contact with her if you want to reach out and talk about hypnobirthing a little bit more. I know we didn't get a lot into that today, but definitely it's something to mention, and definitely go and check out the website and see for yourself the kind of workshops that Violet holds. So again, thank you so much for joining me today, Violet, and being on the show and taking time out of your day to come and join me.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's just been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
You've been listening to Raising Parents, the Parenting Science Insights podcast, produced by the Parenting Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your smartphone. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website at pa.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Dina Sargeant, and thanks for tuning in.